Hey guys, so I know it's been a while since my last video, but yes, you are reading the title correctly. I will be leaving Princeton. Now, before you start, freaking out, writing anything in the comments, start making any assumptions, I want to explain. First of all, this is only a temporary thing. So I'll actually be taking a gap year, which means I'll be gone from Princeton this upcoming spring and fall semester. And yeah, I kind of just want to spend the rest of this video explaining the events that led up to me making this decision, why I ultimately made this decision, as well as some of the lessons that I learned along the way this past semester. But in order for me to explain all of this, I kind of want to give you guys some context of my entire school year itself. So in order to do that, we had to start at the very beginning in September. Now, obviously, being able to be back on campus was a huge blessing. There are a lot of friends who I hadn't seen in a few months, some I hadn't seen, over a year. So it was definitely super great to be back on campus and have some, semblance of normalcy, especially after having basically an entire year of virtual, remote learning. With that said, this is also my junior year, and so I kind of wanted to turn things around. My freshman and sophomore year weren't very successful by my standards, at least in terms of academics. I feel like I struggled a lot there, and I really wanted to do well for myself this year and really succeed, really feel confident in myself academically, and take full advantage of the resources that Princeton had to offer. I was also probably like the healthiest that I had ever been. I was waking up at 6 a.m. consistently for the first few weeks. I was at the gym by 6:30, and for basically the first time in my life, I was actually working out consistently. I also felt like I was able to find a good balance between my social and academic life, at least in that first month. A lot of my classes, weren't getting into super heavy material, so I was still able to, go out on the weekends, hang out with friends. I mean, in this video here, you can literally see us going slip and sliding on a hill in the middle of like this huge thunderstorm that happened on like the second day of school. So as you can see, I really had a lot of time to both, study, but also enjoy myself and, kind of lay back and enjoy college for what it was meant to be. So yeah, September was definitely a very good month for me. Now, by the time October came around, things definitely started to ramp up a good amount. My classes were definitely getting a bit harder, which meant that I was spending, more time every week doing my problem sets, more time in office hours, more time in libraries. But overall, it wasn't too bad. It was still pretty manageable. This is also the point where my extracurriculars started to, ramp up a bit too. At this point, I was in a good amount of different clubs because I had joined them during this remote semester, and at that time, I didn't really give it much thought because if you think about it, like when you're in a virtual semester, like you can only have so many in-person events, and you don't really have to plan for as much stuff. There's not that much you really have to do for these. But I don't think I gave that much thought because by the time we got to in-person, I realized that like I was in a lot more things than I had time for. This is also the point where I actually joined an a cappella group. Now, a lot of you guys might not know this about me, and to be honest, I wouldn't even consider myself much of a singer, but I've always enjoyed singing, and ever since my freshman year, I had always wanted to join an a cappella group. So I decided, why not? I auditioned, and I actually got in. I don't know why they decided to let me in, but regardless, I would do it again and again if I had the choice, because I honestly had such a fun time. Now, although things were definitely ramping up in terms of extracurriculars and my academics, I'd still say I was able to find a pretty good balance of my, my work and social life. That's not to say that I didn't overcommit myself, because I did, and I should have realized that at the time, but honestly, I was still having a pretty good time, and overall, like I didn't have any huge issues. I was still doing pretty okay. Now, by the time November rolled around, this is definitely where things got much worse. I don't want to be dramatic by any means, but things definitely started to go downhill from here. I just finished up my midterm exams, and to be honest, they didn't go as well as I had hoped. I wasn't too disappointed though, because I was planning on staying on campus over fall break, and I wanted to use this time to catch up on any material that I didn't understand, but also get ahead in my classes, so that way I would really be on top of things. There's also a football game, a home game against Harvard, and so I was super excited to go. I went with some friends, and it was a really fun time because it kind of felt like what a normal college experience should feel like, where I wasn't super stressed about any kind of homework or anything like that, and I was able to just go out and enjoy a football game with my friends. It was also a really fun time because this game went to overtime. It was a super legitimately such a close game, and we stormed the field afterwards. After Princeton won, and it was definitely a really fun experience that I definitely won't forget for a while. Now after fall break, this is definitely when things started to go downhill academically for me. There's one night in particular that I remember because it was just so bad. So it was a Friday night, and it was one of my friend's birthdays. So we decided to go out to dinner to celebrate with him. The thing is, I still hadn't finished an assignment that was due at 11 p.m. And so I thought to myself, hey, the dinner's at 6 p.m. I'll stay for an hour, I'll leave early, and I'll keep working on this assignment. And sure, you could say, Justin, you should have just skipped the dinner entirely, but you would think that, I don't know, I feel like I shouldn't have to sacrifice being able to celebrate my friend's birthday just to submit this assignment. Anyway, so I finish up dinner and I leave early and I go to the library to work. Now I just assumed that this library closed at 2 a.m. because that's when it normally does close. But I didn't realize that on Fridays it actually closes at 10:45. So at 10:40, I hear the announcement saying that the library is closing in 5 minutes, and I still have basically one entire problem left on my entire homework. Even just saying this out loud is so ridiculous. Anyway, so 10:45 rolls out, and I literally grab all my stuff and I run outside of the library and I park myself right in front of the steps of the library, and I continue working. And mind you, this is literally 10:45 p.m. My assignment is due in 15 minutes, and it's the middle of November in New Jersey. So it's maybe 30 degrees outside, and I'm writing in the cold on my iPad, just trying to get this assignment done. And I think at this point I realized that I was just not turning in good work. It was not work that I was very proud of, and it's just unacceptable. It was ridiculous to me that I even had to live this way, and I was just not very happy with the situation that I was in. Now, that's not to say that the entire month of November was horrible for me. I was actually able to go up to New York City at one point for the weekend to help run a conference that's actually hosted by Princeton students, and so I got to make some really good friends there, and honestly made a lot of really fun memories that were definitely worth missing out of school for a single day and also the weekend. Although missing out on this weekend did cost me time that I could have spent in the library working on my assignments, I think it was definitely worth it. But it also made things a lot harder for me because I started to get behind due to this. Now, by the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I had actually made plans with some people from back home here in Dallas to actually go up to New York City and spend Thanksgiving there. Now, at the time, I'll be completely honest, I did not really want to go up. I had just spent the most frustrating past few weeks, working on my assignments, and I didn't really want to, be a tourist in New York City. I just wanted to, stay in my dorm, sleep in, and just relax. But in hindsight, I think it was actually a lot better that I went on this trip because I think in the end, it gave me a lot more mental clarity. There's one day in particular that I remember. I think it was the day after Thanksgiving where I was literally walking around Central Park with these friends from back home, and it was so peaceful. It was so serene. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but literally after having spent this entire semester at Princeton in this super just stressful environment, it was just such a different perspective being in this entirely different location where people were just walking around and enjoying their time. For once in these past few months, I feel I didn't have to think about any assignments that I had. I wasn't super worried about these projects or extracurricular meetings that I had. It was so peaceful. I think that's the best way to put it. And so I think going on this trip definitely gave me a lot of mental clarity that I couldn't find on campus, and is honestly one of the biggest reasons why I decided to take the gap year in the first place. I think just having that perspective really showed me wow, this is what life is like outside of this campus, this little bubble that I'm living in 24/7. Yeah. And so finally, we arrived to December. Now, I'll be honest, at this point, I was probably not in my best mental state by any means. I remember there were definitely a lot of days where I did not enjoy waking up. And I mean, I know people say like, oh my gosh, I dread mornings, but at this point it was to the point where like I hated waking up because I knew that I already knew that I was just gonna have a terrible day. After spending, who knows how long the night before working on stuff, I was just not looking forward to spending another day doing the exact same exhausting stuff. So yeah, it was just not a good time. I remember specifically taking this picture here at 2:30 a.m. and thinking to myself, like, remember this feeling that you're feeling right now. And I think at the time it was a combination of frustration and anger. But I don't know who this anger was directed towards. Was it directed towards the university for... I don't even know. Because of my classes? Was it directed to myself for, I don't know, overloading myself with different stuff throughout the semester? And I think that's where the frustration came in, because I didn't know, who I could be mad at. Yeah, ultimately, I continued pushing to the end of the semester, knowing that I just had to survive until winter break. But also at this point, after a lot of time thinking, I decided to officially take the leave of absence. So I emailed my dean and we started getting the paperwork all filed. And by the time I finished finals, which again did not go well for me whatsoever. But yeah, by the time I finished finals, I moved out basically the very next day, packed up all my stuff in the storage unit, and yeah, flew home for what would be, I guess, the next year. And so that's how we arrived here to where I am in Dallas right now today. But yeah, so that's kind of the order of events that led up to me taking this gap year in the end. I could sit here and I could lie to you and say that, oh, I'm taking this gap year so I can, work on my career and really, work on myself, maybe find some internships, get some actual, real life work experience, I could go on and on and on. And don't get me wrong, like those are all things that I do want to do eventually down the line. But in reality, the main reason why I took this gap year is because I was so burnt out. And I'm sure a lot of you guys who are watching this right now are probably students. But if you think about it, you spend, 12 years being a student, and then you go into college, and then you spend another 4 years. And at no point do you ever have any time to just exist as not a student. I feel like anytime you identify yourself, a lot of times you say like, oh, hi, I'm, blah, blah, blah. My name is Justin Chae, and I go to, blank university, or I go, blank college. You always identify yourself as a student, but I don't know what my identity is outside of being a student. To obviously use the time here during this gap year to recover and, focus on bettering my mental health after this past school year, but also figuring out, what my identity is outside of being a student. What do I enjoy doing other than, being in a classroom and studying all the freaking time? Yeah. But yeah, I guess to close out this video, I do want to leave a few nuggets of knowledge, some lessons that I learned. So hopefully you don't, make the same mistakes that I do at any point. I think the first thing is don't overcommit yourself. Know your limits, know what you're capable of, and make sure you know these things ahead of time before you join something. And if you're like me, who didn't do your research and still ends up joining something that that you end up finding out that you don't have the time for, then communicate to the leadership or whatever group that you're in. Just communicate with other people and tell them that you have too much on your plate. Because I honestly think that communication is one of the most important things that you can do in this situation. I think my last piece of advice for anyone who's still watching this is more of a mentality thing, but it's doing the best that you can do. And I know that that's cheesy, and I know that's much easier said than done, but literally just as long as you do the best that you can, then there's nothing more that you can do at the end of the day. And that sounds very repetitive and redundant, but if you think about it, sure, you might fall short of other people's standards, but those are other people's standards, not yourself. So I don't know. I think that gave me a good amount of comfort a lot of times during the semester, especially when it came to academics, because there were a lot of times where I was not scoring that well on my exams, especially exams. I was not scoring very well, but I knew that given the circumstances, given the situation that I was in, I did basically the best that I could. And so even if I didn't get the grade that, even if I didn't even get above average, or even if I was, below average, I knew that, I did the best that I could, and there's nothing more that I could have put out there. So, yeah. The very last thing that I want to end off with is acknowledging the fact that I come from a very privileged position to be able to say any of this at all. The fact that I can even take this gap year to just, kind of spend at home and not have to worry about anything else is very privileged. The fact that I can even complain about going to Princeton University in the first place is very privileged. The fact that I have, even the ability to get my college degree is very privileged. And so I just want to acknowledge that and make it known that I'm trying not to, take any of this for granted, because yeah. Honestly, I think one of the biggest reasons why I didn't post that much throughout this past semester is because I didn't really want to show anyone this side of, what I was experiencing. I mean, obviously there's the one side of like, I didn't even have the energy to pick up a camera and film or edit, but also, yeah, I didn't really want to show off this side of me, this, yeah. So I do want to try being more honest on this channel, being more transparent, so just putting that out there. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.